Hello, everyone. So I'm just going through the contract that I drafted for week 7, some details that I thought I should be adding in there. I used Appendix C in the textbook just to utilize an overall draft of an enforceable sales contract. So basically, in the beginning, I just kind of laid out the agreement terms, and I designated the seller using just a easier abbreviated JEFS to identify JEFS as the seller, the buyer, Hillcrest School District, here and after Hillcrest. And then I also put that they should be collectively referred to as parties if they're both referred to in the contract, which throughout the contract they are both referred to as parties. In the terms, I just kind of laid out the overall amount of products, and I also used the term clothing products to describe the items that Jeff's would be providing to Hillcrest. And then I also calculated the total price for each category, like for $15 per pair of basketball shorts, and they ordered 175 pairs. I just calculated those total numbers just so there would be no confusion as to the total amounts due for each category and then in total. And then in section 3, I put in the payment conditions. I noticed in the job that I work in, it's very specific as to I work in debt collection. We draft a lot of settlement agreements. I don't really draft contract agreements, but I know that in settlement agreements, it's very imperative to ensure that you designate your payment times, and I would assume that it would be the same thing for a contract. So I decided to add in a payment condition that payment is to be made by wire transfer or check made payable to Jeff's Sporting Goods, exact writing. And then I put payment by check must be dated on or before the delivery date of August 23rd, 2021. I just put this year. And then I also put in recitals just kind of an overall view of how their agreement is to be distributed, such as Hillcrest reserves the right to order at least up to 500 single items, which comprise of basketball, volleyball, or soccer uniform outfits for boys or girls. And then I also put in the clause that Hillcrest, the buyer, is willing and able to make additional advance payment of $10,000 in exchange for having the right to take delivery of such an order within 30 days after placing any order. And then I just put that I put an underline so that it stands out for both parties that Hillcrest agrees to make payment on these items within 14 days of the contract. And then number 5, I put a disclaimer of warranty, just kind of covering Jeff's in that the clothing products are sold in as-is condition, and all the warranties in connection with the clothing products, express or implied, including without limitation description. So basically they just come in kind of as is, as they get them is what they get. And then I just kind of put a lot of warranty and assumption of risk clauses. And I just put that Hillcrest accepts and assumes risks and rights that may result out of using said clothing products. I think the most important one that I thought should be added in here is the risk of loss. And I'll just read it so that you guys can see it. I'm just going to highlight it here if I can. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of highlight it here and read along with you guys so you guys see. Risk of loss is Hillcrest assumes responsibility and costs for all packing, crating, removal, and transportation of the equipment, aka the clothing products, or cost of transportation. And then I also put if Jeff's assists Hillcrest in this regard, it is agreed that such assistance is gratuitous, and Jeff's has no obligation or liability arising out of such assistance. So let's say his employees offer to drop their clothing packages in the main office, and they assume no liability in case those clothing products, like something happens or they get dropped in water or something. They're just doing it out of a nicety and a courtesy to their client, but they don't necessarily assume the liability of having to pay for the products if they get damaged while they're in transport. I also put amendments because I think it's important to identify when you have an original contract and then you make another order, and then certain things are stipulated or added into the contract later on. So I put just no changes or modification to any of the original terms. However, if there's any new orders placed, you would need a new contract, so it would be order 2, order 3. You can keep the original terms, just changing like the type of product you're buying and the amount. I also added a resolution clause, which just basically states that any controversy or dispute arising among the parties, and then both parties agree to meet and confer before pursuing legal remedies, included but not limited to arbitration, litigation, and mediation. So that clause, I feel like, covers the aspect of adhering to alternative dispute resolution. And then I also put in here, I'll just highlight it, Section 14, in the event of a default and failed resolution, so failed alternative dispute resolution, that the prevailing party is entitled to attorney's fees, court costs, and collection fees in the event of a default or litigation. And then I just also added in like a gender and number clause, which if I referred to it as it, he, she, or they, that it's substantially referring to Jeffs or Hillcrest. And I also put limitation of damages, which the $20,000 is Hillcrest's request from Jeffs if they fail to recover the products. And then the last page, I just put no further text. Signatures are on page 4 just to identify that there's a line break and that there's going to be nothing further regarding text language, and it'll just be signatures on the last page. So I put agent for Hillcrest School District or agent for Jeffs, because sometimes when people are processing contracts, it won't necessarily be like the superintendent or the CEO signing the contracts. It might be an agent. So I just put that just to signify that the parties are authorizing an agent to sign for them. Yeah, thank you for listening to my contract. Good luck to everyone in their future endeavors.